A sunny April morning in Fayetteville, Arkansas, turned dark when Michael Everly stumbled upon a gruesome scene next door. His neighbor, successful real estate agent Johnny Ray Baxter, lay motionless in a pool of blood, bludgeoned to death with a hammer. As police sirens wailed in the distance, questions raced through Michael's mind. Who could have committed such a brutal act against the well-liked Johnny Ray? The truth behind this shocking murder would unravel a complex web of hidden secrets and intense emotions, leading investigators down a path they never expected. Johnny Ray Baxter seemed to have it all. At 42, he was a top-performing real estate agent in Fayetteville, Arkansas, known for his charismatic personality and ability to close tough deals. His success was evident in the sprawling home he shared with his wife Darling and stepdaughter Lily, complete with manicured lawn and luxury cars in the driveway. Johnny Ray met Darling Adams 5 years earlier at a charity gala. Recently divorced and raising her teenage daughter Lily alone, Darling was drawn to Johnny Ray's confidence and charm. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage within a year, and Johnny Ray stepped into the role of stepfather to 15-year-old Lily. On the surface, the blended family appeared to adjust well. Johnny Ray took Lily shopping and attended her school events. Darling glowed with happiness, grateful for a second chance at love and financial stability. But beneath the polished exterior, cracks were forming in the family's foundation. Neighbors overheard heated arguments from the Baxter home late at night. Darling was seen leaving in tears on occasion. Lily's behavior at school became erratic, with slipping grades and reports of defiance towards teachers. Johnny Ray spent more time at the office, while Darling threw herself into volunteer work. Lily retreated to her room, rarely emerging except for meals. One evening, a neighbor heard shattering glass and angry shouting from the Baxter home. The next day, Darling was seen leaving with a hastily packed suitcase, only to return hours later. Something was clearly amiss in the Baxter household, but no one could have predicted the shocking turn of events that was about to unfold. As spring arrived in Fayetteville, the Baxters maintained their facade of domestic bliss, but behind closed doors, a storm was brewing, one that would soon erupt into unimaginable violence and forever shatter the illusion of their perfect life. On a crisp spring morning, Michael Everly's phone rang. It was his neighbor, Darling Baxter, asking if he could check on Johnny Ray. She explained that her husband wasn't answering her calls and she was stuck in traffic. Michael agreed, thinking nothing of the simple request. As Michael approached the Baxter residence, an uneasy feeling crept over him. The house seemed eerily quiet. He knocked on the front door, but there was no answer. Using the spare key Darling had given him, Michael let himself in. The air felt heavy, and there was a faint, metallic smell he couldn't quite place. Michael called out Johnny Ray's name as he moved through the house. In the living room, he noticed signs of a disturbance: overturned chairs and shards of broken glass on the floor. His heart began to race as he made his way upstairs, the silence broken only by the sound of his own footsteps. When Michael reached the master bedroom, he froze in horror. There on the floor lay Johnny Ray Baxter in a pool of blood. A hammer covered in dark red stains rested nearby. Michael's legs gave way, and he sank to his knees, trembling. He fumbled for his phone, his voice shaking as he dialed 911. Police cars and an ambulance arrived quickly at the Baxter home. Detective Sarah Mitchell Kinsey took charge of the investigation, ordering the area to be cordoned off. She surveyed the crime scene, noting the blood spatter on the walls and the hammer, which was carefully bagged as evidence. Forensic teams collected blood samples and dusted for fingerprints, taking care not to contaminate any potential evidence. As the investigation unfolded, neighbors gathered outside, whispering in shock. The Baxters had seemed like the perfect family, How could something like this happen here? Michael Everly stood apart from the crowd, still visibly shaken. He couldn't shake the image of Johnny Ray's battered body from his mind. Detective Kinsey approached Michael, her notebook in hand. "Mr. Everly, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me exactly what happened when you entered the house." Michael nodded, taking a deep breath. As he recounted the events of that morning, the reality of the situation began to sink in. The picture-perfect life of Johnny Ray Baxter had come to a brutal, bloody end. And now, as police combed through the Baxter home for clues, the hunt for a killer was about to begin. While the neighborhood buzzed with speculation, Detectives Sarah Mitchell Kinsey and James Carter faced a perplexing reality. In family-related murders, the truth often hides in plain sight. As they began their investigation, they couldn't have imagined the web of lies and conflicting evidence that awaited them. Detective Kinsey, known for her sharp attention to detail, and Detective Carter, respected for his methodical approach, immediately set to work examining the crime scene. They documented the position of Johnny Ray's body, blood spatter patterns, and collected forensic evidence, including blood samples, fingerprints, and fibers. The initial evidence processing revealed conflicting clues. The blood at the scene matched Johnny Ray's DNA, confirming he was killed in the bedroom. However, the lack of defensive wounds on the victim's body puzzled the detectives, suggesting he may have known his attacker or been taken by surprise. Interviews with neighbors and family members painted a complicated picture of the Baxter household. Some described them as the perfect family, while others recalled hearing arguments and seeing Darling leave the house in tears on multiple occasions. This information led the detectives to investigate the family's dynamics and potential motives for the crime. Detective Carter analyzed Johnny Ray's financial records and business dealings, searching for any signs of trouble that could have led to his murder. Meanwhile, Detective Kinsey conducted a thorough examination of the family's personal belongings, hoping to uncover hidden clues about their relationships and possible secrets. As the investigation progressed, suspicions began to center on Darling Baxter. Her alibi of being out of town at the time of the murder seemed shaky, and her emotional state during questioning raised red flags. The discovery of Darling's personal diary, filled with entries expressing frustration and suspicion about Johnny Ray's behavior, further intensified their focus on her as a potential suspect. Despite the evidence pointing towards Darling, the detectives remained cautious. They knew from experience that domestic homicides often involved complex emotional entanglements and hidden motives. They continued to pursue other leads and interview potential witnesses, determined to build a solid case before making any arrests. Just as the detectives were preparing to bring Darling in for more intensive questioning, a surprising piece of evidence came to light. This unexpected development would force them to reassess their entire approach to the case, leading the investigation down a path they never anticipated. Family secrets can poison relationships from within. As Lily Adams entered the interrogation room, her discomfort was evident. Detectives Sarah Mitchell Kinsey and James Carter sensed she carried a burden far beyond her years. They approached the interview carefully, starting with simple questions about Lily's relationship with her stepfather, Johnny Ray. At first, Lily's responses were guarded, but as the conversation progressed, her composure began to crack. When asked about the night of Johnny Ray's murder, Lily's demeanor changed dramatically. She fidgeted with her hands, her breathing quickened, and tears formed in her eyes. Detective Kinsey gently pressed further, asking if there was something Lily needed to share about her stepfather. After a long silence, Lily finally spoke in a whisper, revealing a truth that had tormented her for years. She described how her relationship with Johnny Ray had taken a disturbing turn shortly after her 18th birthday. What began as seemingly innocent compliments gradually evolved into something far more sinister. Lily recounted feeling confused and conflicted as her stepfather initiated a sexual relationship with her, swearing her to secrecy and manipulating her emotions. As Lily's confession unfolded, the detectives struggled to maintain their professional composure. She admitted to feeling intense guilt and fear, torn between loyalty to her mother and the twisted bond she had formed with Johnny Ray. The affair had continued for nearly 2 years, with Lily living in constant fear of discovery. Lily's revelation shed new light on the tensions within the Baxter household. The detectives exchanged troubled glances as the interview concluded. What they initially believed to be a straightforward domestic homicide had now become a complex web of betrayal, manipulation, and hidden motives. Detectives Kinsey and Carter left the interrogation room with heavy hearts. They now had to reassess all the evidence, considering the possibility that Lily's involvement in the affair could have played a role in Johnny Ray's murder. The case had taken a dark and unexpected turn, leaving them with more questions than answers. Just when the detectives thought they had uncovered the darkest secret in the Baxter family, a chance discovery in a local park was about to turn the investigation on its head. On April 17, 2015, a jogger's routine run through the park near Beaver Lake led to a discovery that would dramatically alter the course of the investigation. The runner noticed a plastic bag partially concealed beneath fallen leaves. Inside, they found a blood-stained shirt and a pair of gloves. Alarmed by the suspicious items, the jogger immediately contacted the police. Detectives Sarah Mitchell Kinsey and James Carter rushed to the scene. As they carefully examined the contents of the bag, their suspicions grew. The bloodstains on the shirt appeared consistent with the type of injuries inflicted on Johnny Ray Baxter. The gloves, too, seemed to be potential evidence in the brutal murder. The items were quickly transported to the forensics lab for analysis. The results were startling. The blood on the shirt matched Johnny Ray's DNA, confirming its connection to the murder. Even more intriguing, the gloves contained fingerprints that did not belong to the victim. This revelation opened up new avenues of investigation and raised questions about potential accomplices or unknown suspects. As the analysis continued, another bombshell dropped. Hair fibers found on the gloves matched Darling Baxter's DNA. This discovery sent shockwaves through the investigative team. The evidence now seemed to implicate both Darling and potentially Lily in Johnny Ray's murder. The legal implications of this evidence were significant. Items found in public spaces, like the park where the bag was discovered, are often admissible in court as they are considered to be in the public domain. This unexpected breakthrough could prove crucial in building a case against the perpetrator. As the detectives digested this new information, they realized the case had reached a critical juncture. The evidence pointed to a more complex scenario than they had initially imagined, with the possibility of multiple parties involved in Johnny Ray's death. The investigation was far from over, and the truth, it seemed, was even more twisted than they had feared. In the world of criminal investigations, alibis are often seen as solid proof of innocence. But when technology contradicts a suspect's story, It can shake the foundations of a case. This is exactly what happened in the Baxter investigation. Detectives Sarah Mitchell Kinsey and James Carter turned their attention to surveillance footage from a gas station near Beaver Lake. As they reviewed the grainy video, Detective Carter suddenly pointed at the screen. There, unmistakably, was Darling Baxter's distinctive red SUV pulling into the gas station at 11:42 p.m. on the night of the murder. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Darling had claimed she was out of town visiting her sister when Johnny Ray died. The surveillance footage not only placed her in Fayetteville, but also put her near where the blood-stained evidence was discovered. The gas station footage provided a crucial piece of the puzzle, directly contradicting Darling's alibi. Armed with this new evidence, Detectives Kinsey and Carter prepared to confront her. The tension in the interrogation room was palpable as they presented the surveillance footage. Darling's face paled, and her hands began to tremble as she realized her story had fallen apart. Over the next several hours, Darling's resolve slowly broke down. She finally confessed to killing Johnny Ray in a fit of rage after discovering his affair with Lily. With tears streaming down her face, Darling described following Johnny Ray to the gas station that night, confronting him at home, and striking him repeatedly with a hammer in a blind fury. The next morning, Darling Baxter was formally arrested for the murder of her husband. The case that began with a neighbor's grisly discovery had reached its conclusion. But for the Baxter family and the community, the ordeal was far from over. The shocking truth of Johnny Ray's death and the events leading up to it would soon be laid bare in a court of law. The arrest of Darling Baxter marked the beginning of a complex legal battle that would captivate Fayetteville. As the trial began at the Washington County Courthouse, the community grappled with a difficult question. Could a woman who killed her cheating husband ever truly be considered innocent? District Attorney Sarah Thompson led the prosecution, presenting a methodical case against Darling. The evidence was damning. A blood-stained hammer, incriminating surveillance footage, and Darling's own confession. Thompson portrayed Darling as a woman consumed by rage and jealousy, who chose murder over divorce when faced with her husband's betrayal. The defense team countered by depicting Darling as a victim of extraordinary circumstances, driven to the brink by her husband's affair with her own daughter. Expert witnesses testified about the psychological impact of such betrayal and the concept of temporary insanity. The courtroom fell silent as Lily Adams took the stand, tearfully recounting the details of her illicit relationship with Johnny Ray. As the trial progressed, the emotional toll on the Baxter family and the community became increasingly apparent. Friends and neighbors packed the courtroom gallery, their faces a mix of shock, sadness, and morbid fascination. The 12 jurors listened intently, their expressions giving no hint of their internal deliberations. In their closing arguments, the prosecution urged the jury to focus on the brutal nature of the crime and the premeditation evident in Darling's actions. The defense made a final emotional appeal, asking the jurors to consider the extraordinary circumstances that led to this tragedy. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson rose to speak. On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Darling Baxter, guilty. Gasps and muffled sobs filled the room as the judge sentenced Darling to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As Darling was led away in handcuffs, the community of Fayetteville began the long process of healing. The Baxter case had exposed the dark underbelly of their seemingly idyllic town, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of family, betrayal, and justice. The Baxter case exposed the devastating consequences of betrayal and unchecked emotions within a family. What appeared to be a stable household collapsed into a tragic web of secrets, infidelity, and murder. The affair between Johnny Ray and his stepdaughter Lily created deep wounds that festered silently, ultimately leading to unthinkable violence. This case underscores the complexity of human relationships, particularly in blended families. It reminds us that even seemingly stable families can harbor dark secrets, and that the line between love and hate can become dangerously blurred when trust is broken. As Fayetteville begins to heal, this tragedy leaves a sobering reflection on the fragility of family bonds. It emphasizes the critical importance of open communication and seeking help before conflicts escalate beyond control. The Baxter family's story stands as a haunting testament to the destructive power of secrets and the volatile nature of human emotions when pushed to their limits.